We'll do the. Fuck. Okay.
All right, folks, we're back at it again. Two Live Fools, episode 28, and we have a returning guest today. Our buddy Frank Rosenthal. He's been turned up recently, and he's also brought a buddy of his. So I'd like to welcome Frank Rosenthal and Vinny Grillo.
What's up, boys? Cheers.
What do you guys got in that cup? I know it's not tea, man.
It's coffee.
Coffee at 8 o'clock at night.
Straight up coffee.
The best time of the day. Yep.
Oh man, what do you guys get into tonight?
Well, we just had dinner. We're actually at my parents' house. We had dinner, and then we'll probably head back to Astoria and maybe grab a beer, chill out.
I like that.
That's like code word, just one beer. I mean, I remember living in the city, man. Nothing closes till like 4 a.m., man. So.
Well, I mean, now I think like everything's closing a lot earlier, but we're also gonna train in the morning, so we're gonna cap it at one beer tonight, and yeah, we'll save the alcohol poisoning for tomorrow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, since when are you a responsible adult?
Yeah.
Frankie, you've been competing pretty regularly, especially through COVID and everything's been coming up. So how's the competition scene been? Like traveling and doing your thing and whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely obviously different than it was before COVID hit, but for the most part, I'm just super happy that I'm still able to compete and that promotions are continuing to, have the athletes, be able to do what we do. So I just went out to Submission Underground a couple weeks ago, and Chael Sonnen ran like another unbelievable event out in Portland. And I was able.
Yeah, I heard it's a great show.
Yeah, it was a really fun show. I was able to pick up a submission win there. And then actually this Wednesday I'll be leaving for Texas because I'm going to do Fight to Win next week in Dallas. So I'm just staying busy, and it's been good.
So I actually saw your submission. Very, very slick, sir. I like it. It was beautiful. Who you competing against at Fight to Win? Do you know yet?
Yeah, I'm fighting a guy named Jackson Talon, something like that. He's a Brazilian guy, black belt from Texas. He's won like some IBJJF stuff. I think he won the American Nationals. He took second at the No-Gi Pan. So he's a good black belt. Definitely solid competitor, and I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
Have you done a couple of the Fight to Win shows?
Yeah, I've been on 3 of them now.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been on 3 of them, and it's a fun promotion to be on, like especially being on Flow. I always be a part of that, and it's great exposure for the athletes, and they obviously always give us really good matchups too. So everything comes together.
It's a good promotion. It definitely is. I know I've had 1 or 2 my guys compete on the Fight to Wins, and it's a cool stage being up there and like how they do the whole presentation for the athletes. It's like it's like a UFC almost.
Yeah.
For a grapple.
Yes. So Vinny, Vinny, I know you and Frankie you guys train pretty frequently together, but do you have anything coming up? Any tournaments or anything? Or
I wish. I got to win a Naga belt first, man. I got to start.
Oh, okay.
I've been pretty much just training full time and teaching. I have a background in education,
nice.
So a lot of this time I've just been spent teaching in a gym rather than competing out there. But I help him out. That's his thing. So I'm always happy to like come out, corner him if he needs help. So I'm in the room too at Renzo's. It's fucking great time.
What's your specialization in education?
I'm actually it was early, so it was like K through 6. I'm certified all subjects. I have a music degree, so I taught elementary school for a few years, and then I was able to teach jiu-jitsu now full time. So I'm very fortunate now to make a living from it, but took a long time. 31 now.
The Bronx MMA.
Yeah. We both teach at Bayside, which is like the sister school of Bronx martial arts. Yeah.
So that's in Queens, right? Bayside, that's Queens too.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. How's it been returning to training? Have you guys been able to return in New York? Because I mean, like we've been back in Jersey for the most part, but what's that like? Because competing's one thing. I'm a school owner. We've talked about this, having to deal with this, having to, do the virtual stuff, and now getting people back on the mats. Are you seeing a good flow of people that are coming in, or is it still like some people are, the diehard, dirt balls like us will roll through everything, and but some people are still a little nervous. I'm seeing, I don't know if you guys are seeing the same thing.
No, I mean our students,
disgusting motherfuckers.
Yeah, our students pretty much as expected, came back and want to very much get back into training and get back into the groove of things. So we're set to, I think, officially open, I think, October 2nd. Obviously, like, Doug Pelankovic, who's the owner, went through all the protocols that he had to go through with the Board of Health and got everything done. So I think our first day like officially opening is October 2nd, and obviously there will be some stipulations, but yeah, I mean, pretty much our students who were there, from not the beginning, but like have been there for a little while, are eager to get back and ready to go. So we don't pressure people either way. We tell them, like, look, if you want to stay home, stay home. That's no problem. If you want to come in, we'll be here ready to rock and roll. So whatever they want to do, they can do.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how I've been handling it. It's funny because my grappling classes are actually more packed than my kickboxing classes. So, like, you can social distance a little bit more in kickboxing and whatnot, but, like, my jiu-jitsu classes have been rolling. So, but jiu-jitsu people are different breeds. We roll through each other's sweat every day. So I think, once we all made an educated decision and did our research like we talked on the last one, we're like, we're going to train. We're going to train.
No easy way around it,
There isn't. You're not going to escape it. It's not going to go away anytime soon. I think coronaviruses have been around for 55 million years. So, I think we're going to have to just kind of roll with it.
Yeah.
I love it, man.
So, Vinny, looking at like your education background now that you're like teaching jiu-jitsu, do you see like kind of your educational background kind of complementing like your teaching style for jiu-jitsu?
Absolutely. Man, like, I mean, they always say, like, if you can teach a young kid, I mean, you can teach anybody. It's super, like, and I'm very jaded to the education system. I didn't like it. I left on kind of with a bad taste in my mouth because I just didn't agree with a lot of the things. It was very difficult to actually teach things that matter. But for sure, like being trained in education makes it so easy to kind of convey concepts to people that like you would, especially been training now 10 years, certain things at the basic level, like sometimes you forget, like you just assume people would know how to hip escape or assume that, they have these kind of awarenesses that we just kind of take for granted now at this point. But for sure, I absolutely love taking an academic approach to it. And I think it shows, and people kind of notice the difference. They're like, oh, like you have strong public speaking skills, you have ability to work the room, and say what you need to say in as concise a manner as possible. And man, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. I mean,
you have a background in education,
you
right,
taught
Frankie?
too, right, Frankie?
Yeah, I actually have a degree in teaching as well, and it's funny, like both of us, when we were getting our degrees and finishing college, we're like, fuck, like what's the point of this? Like we just want to do jiu-jitsu full time. But now I'm so happy that I did do it because, being an instructor and obviously wanting to open a school one day, like all the points that Vinny said, having those skills has been really helpful. And what's interesting is like your personality plays into it too. So like I think, Vinny and I have a similar style of teaching, obviously because we train both under the same team, but also because like we have that education background, but also like there's strengths that he has that I don't have, and maybe strengths that I have that he doesn't. So like, for example, like, of course I'm trying my best to be the best instructor possible, but I would say that like, look, for a white belt class, a basic class, like Vinny just does a much better job than I do. Not that I can't teach it. It's just that like his personality is maybe a little better suited for that. Whereas my personality might be a little better suited for a competitor because, I am one, right? So
you gotta know your lanes.
Exactly.
You know?
And I think
how to know your lanes. And like,
yeah.
you know, I've been teaching longer than I think you guys have been alive. That's how fucking old I am. But, you know, I've been training for 32 years and I've been teaching for about 20 plus. And that's the whole thing. Like, you got to know your lane with certain things where it's like, okay, I'm, you know, like my toddler class, like I'm really good with toddlers. You know, I'm good with adults too, but my niche sometimes is like my toddler class. You know, it helps. I have like 27 kids of my own, but you know, like you have to know your lanes and you have to know your strengths. And I think it's good when you complement each other because where your shortcomings might come, Vinny can fill in and vice versa.
And like I try to use him as much of a resource as I can. Like I'm not just complacent being like, oh well, I'll teach the no-gi or whatever. So like there's tons of times
we'll be want to get better all around.
Yeah, and I'll be like, hey man, like this situation happened, like how do you think we should handle this one? And like for a lot of them, he's got a better, you know what I mean? Not a better answer, but just like he can offer maybe advice on how to do that. Yeah, and vice versa. So I think we play off each other like really well, and you know that's important to being well-rounded as an instructor.
Well, that'd be like just training guard all the time and never focusing on your top game.
Yeah,
true. You know, and it's just like, well, I'm really fucking good at guard, so we don't need that top game right now, right? You know, like, yeah, no, it's good. I think but I think that's also comes back to training. It just makes you more self-aware. Like as a jiu-jitsu, especially jiu-jitsu, you know, I mean, I've trained multiple arts, but like jiu-jitsu makes you so hyper aware of your own body and your movement and your balance. I think it always transfers over to other things that you do too. You start becoming more self-aware of, oh, am I moving the right way? Am I telling them the right way, etc. So, I mean, jiu-jitsu complements pretty much every aspect I know of my life, your guys' life, Drew's life. Like, it definitely, like, when you get that different thought process, we don't think like regular people.
Yeah, I haven't thought like a regular person in a long time.
Regular people, you know?
All right.
Which
We're
I think
institutionalized now.
What's that?
We're institutionalized now.
Yeah.
Only we have in a box.
That's awesome. So, excuse me. But you guys, with the teaching and everything else, do you think it makes you a better competitor?
I think it.
Yeah, only to an extent.
To an extent, maybe, but you know, I've always said from the beginning, I almost have like two different roles that I play. Like my personality, like as an athlete. So, for example, when I'm at Renzo's, you know, training with John, is very, very different than when I'm at Bayside and now I'm like, you know, pretty much like I'm teaching most of the classes there. And I've learned to turn one on and off. And I think you have to be able to do that. So like, you know, it's two different jobs almost. And so I try to compartmentalize as best I can and be as unselfish as possible when I'm at Bayside and give my students everything that they need. And when I'm at Renzo's, I try to be as selfish as possible. And I mean that in the best way. You know, like by selfish, I mean like doing everything in my power to squeeze everything out of this that I can. And so yes, kind of separate the two.
No, I understand. I think two things with like being a competitor and just teaching. I think teaching sometimes makes you better because you really have to break down the move and you really have to understand the move inside and out. From, you know, the most basic level to the most complex level, and then you got to be able to relay that information to another individual that might not be that doesn't have the same thought process as you. So then you have to learn how to teach it a different way. Like you say, some people are visual learners, some people are scientific learners. I think that's the biggest thing for me is I've gotten good at, you know, relaying my point to people that don't think even anywhere close to me, but then you bring them into your realm. So that means you really like, you start understanding jiu-jitsu more and the moves more. I think that's what I meant. Like, does it help you in that way?
Definitely does. Definitely does.
Yeah, because if you could explain an armbar to a white belt on the most basic level and then explain it to a black belt and tighten him up and then do this, I mean, you really have to have a good concept of that technique.
Yeah, and I think like we were both given that because we've had such good instructors, you know, too. I think that plays a big part into it. Like that's a skill that you can learn later on, but it really helps if you have good instruction early on because you learn how to like emulate it. Yes. So, you know, like sure, like your brown belts and purple belts, like, you know, they can have some of those skills as well because you've been teaching them for 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, and they start just taking on that role and taking on that information, and then they start, because that's what, for me personally too, like that's one of my biggest things is like I want to make other guys good instructors. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to continue to pass this on for generations. Like, I can't be like, the be-all, end-all of everything. Like, I want to make, Drew just as good as an instructor as I am because he's going to live longer than me because he eats better. And,
Listen, Shake Shack isn't better. Don't try to tell me Shake Shack is eating better.
You're built like a fucking brick shit house. Shut up. So... But yeah, that's the way of transferring and making sure that the art goes on and doesn't die and always evolves, I think,
Yeah, for sure.
It is pretty wild too to see like blue belts that you're teaching doing things that like if they fought you at blue belt, they would beat the living shit out of you. And it's like that's kind of a good instructor, I guess.
Yeah.
That's what I tell my guys all the time because, like, especially as they start getting the purple belt and brown belt and, the guys are bigger than me in here and I'm getting older and they're young bucks. I'm like, yo, you should beat me. If not, you're a bitch. Like, everything I know, I taught you everything I am, and you're a stud. So if you ain't kicking my ass, I ain't doing my job.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, how that goes.
For sure.
You gotta drop the old man strength on him every once in a while.
Gotta let him know, man.
If not, I fight him. I don't care. I have prison rules. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I tell my students, I go, I love you guys to death, but I'm not letting you score a single fucking point. Ever.
That's like when I play any sports with any of my kids. I'm like, they need to win. Like, I don't nothing. I'm like, out as fast as they can. Jiu-jitsu, I'm like, you're choked, leg lock. Like, and I mean, he's 2 and 4 and 6. So, but you got to teach them young, right?
Let them know, dude.
All my kids knew how to tap by the time they were 2 years old.
As they should.
They're like, tap, 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 tap. So now they grab a hold of me and they're like, you tapping? I'm like, let's go.
Amazing.
Raising Vikings.
Yeah, they're pretty much Vikings. So there's been, I mean, you guys have seen it, like that one-on-one time you get from actually being at the academy and being with an instructor and training is, it's almost impossible to replicate. And now you've seen like this explosion for the past years of like, online content, specifically like BJJ fanatics and obviously like YouTube and whatnot. Like, what would you say to like, if you had like a student who was trying to incorporate some of that content into their game with also that like on the mat instruction as well?
It's a great question, actually. So this is something that I feel like is especially an issue now for this generation of athletes rather than even when we were coming up, even though I'm obviously like a young dude. There just wasn't as much online content when I was a blue belt. So I would say that all this information is it's awesome. It's fantastic. Okay. However, this is auxiliary information. This is like in addition to the work and the training and the studying that you should have been doing already. It's not in place of training. So I look at it almost as like, if we're to make like an analogy to like school, this is not this is like extra credit kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you're not taking care of your baseline stuff to begin with, right? You're studying, like you're coming to class, you're training, like you're spending that one-on-one time with your instructor, you're training with all your training partners. Like then the video doesn't really matter. The video is really going to push you to the next level if you're already doing all that work anyway and using it as an additional resource. What I don't like to see is like people that are young in the sport trying to think that it's a shortcut. It's not a shortcut. Like
it's like Cliff Notes, right?
Yeah, it's actually what it should be used as is a resource to make you work even harder.
Yes.
So like me, like I was big into, drilling when I was a blue and purple belt. Not that I don't drill now, but I was into like kind of like robotic drilling. And having a DVD like the ones that are out now would have really helped me because it would have given me a direction to go in when I actually set the timer for these drill sessions. I would have had exact content of like, here's what we're going to, do 30 reps of this or 50 reps of this.
We just leg drag for an hour.
Right. And instead I'm doing like for an hour. It's like, how much better are you going to get at leg drags? But yeah, so to answer, I think it's good, but again, it's not a shortcut. It's got to be an additional resource. What do you think?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like I think I remember like it was like the Wild West on YouTube in like 2010, 11. I remember trying to look online and being like, it was like Budo videos.
Yep.
And like Roger Gracie, Master of Escapes, which was like one highlight video. And that was, and then Marcelo, like, you know, strangling Vitor in like 8 seconds. It was things
like highlight reels before you even had like content.
Yeah. And that was like, we just kind of had to like take that apart for what it was. But it's amazing.
You'd have to freeze frame the video as you're going and be like, rewind that. How's his hands? Which way is he going? Yep, I know.
It was like you were just like walking around with like our heads cut off. But like now it's like it's almost like it's like the whole idea. You could say this in society at large. There's so much information now that it's like almost like information overload. Yeah. What's good and what's shit? Like I'm sure we all can have a moment where some new guy comes up and they say, "Oh, what do you think of this?" And it's some fucking trash move that they saw online, and you're just kind of trying to be nice to them.
Yeah.
You're like, "Oh, that would never work. Yeah. Sorry." Like, what the fuck is that?
Oh, dude, I had that happen to me like 2 days ago. I get it, bro. They're like, "Oh, coach, I was watching this." I'm like, "That's awesome." I'm like, "Try it," but you guys also know I'm a dick, so I'm like, "Don't fucking watch it. Go drill your goddamn arm bars, and then we'll get back to your upside down heat part." Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my students are like, "Well, how do you know that guy's not good?"
You know?
You know that guy's not good. I'm like, because I fought him 17 times. You know what I mean? Like, but we just take my word for it, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Gordon Ryan DVD. Let's call it a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the way Gordon and John, you know, they relay the info, because Gordon's like a mini John, right? You know, even when you see, like, I noticed big, like last time me and you sat down and, you know, you guys train with him so much. Because, I mean, I've been training with him on and off, popping into the city for the past 15 years. So I know how John, like, teaches and trains. But I even watch, like, you and, like, I've seen Gary at seminars and stuff. Like, you guys are, like, mini ones. Because you use the same verbiage, you use the same, like, you know, like, and that makes you guys great instructors and being able to relay the information because, you know, he's so cerebral. He, like, laid it out where, like, you guys can pass it on with the blueprint laid out too. And you guys do a really good job of translating that information.
Yeah, we try our best. I think, like, what people also have to realize is, like, it's not enough just to be able to know, like, what John is saying, but, like, to really understand it, there's a difference. Like, anybody could say and teach the things that John says and teaches, but, like, you know, I spent the last, you know, however long it's been now, training twice a day with the guy, like, getting my shit kicked in every single day, twice a day, like, to learn what it actually means and be able to relay it. So I think, like,
really get the concepts, right?
Yeah, like, people just need to remember, like, you know, you got to put the work in along with, you know, whatever the words are.
Teaching ain't for everybody, too.
Right. I know plenty of teachers.
Some guys are really good, and they wouldn't be able to work with him just with his, like, you know, how he is, his you know, his personality and how intelligent he is. Like, you know, some guys, you know, he can come off douchey sometimes.
Yeah, but again, it's like you're gonna get out of it what you put into it. You know, if you think you're gonna show up, like, and, you know,
I'm not there to be his friend.
Yeah, like, go through the motions for an hour and then go home and then you're going to be really good at this. That ain't the way it works. You know, I've got you, like, you're studying, you're taking notes. It's like being in school. You know, you're constantly working on this stuff if you want to be able to get the most out of it. And if you don't, that's totally fine. But there's a reason why I think, like, you know, I've learned now, especially, like, there's a very small group of grapplers that actually know what they're talking about. And it's smaller than I thought it was, you know, when I was a purple or brown belt. Like, you quickly learn, like, the elite level of talent in this sport is way smaller than you think. But, you know, there's a reason for that. It's like that in any field. You know, these guys put the most work in. So
there's levels to this shit.
Yeah, that's right.
And as I learned last time Frank he came to visit us, you know. That was a hard Saturday.
Hey, what? I'll tell you what. The concept you were telling me on those days, I've been using it, and dude, it just made a jump. It made a jump for me. It was like just the littlest thing about the positioning, keeping that tripod, like the 3 points of contact, triangle, like just that concept. But I mean, like, that's the other thing too. Like, we talked about it. It's like we know how to do a fucking arm par.
Yep.
You know, like we've been training long enough. Like we know how to do this. Now it's just the little tweaks in the concepts that can make our games jump dramatically because we know how to strangle a human. We know how to hold one down. We know how to break their limbs. But now it's just getting to those things on the higher level guys, getting positions. And like you said, whether you're sick, you're tired, you're having a bad day, you can still execute your game.
Yeah. I think that's the best approach to take.
You know?
Yeah. I think that's the approach everybody should be taking, and that's going to make your game like develop even as your athletic skills might not be what they were 10 years ago. Your jiu-jitsu should be better. You know, you should move better.
More efficiently.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I think it is too. Like as I'm getting older now too, like my jiu-jitsu, you know, I mean, there's certain attributes that are getting better on me, but it's just I've been doing combat sports for 32 years. Like that's like dog years, so I'm like 207 now. So I've already cracked, broken this, that. So I have to be more efficient now.
Yeah.
I just, you know, you have to be able to hang with good guys that are still competitive, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So concept-wise, like kind of drilling off of that a little bit, you know, let's dig into that a little bit because, like, you know, we were talking about, like, okay, videos, DVDs, this, that, but, like, the concepts me and you were just speaking about, why don't you dive into that a little bit? Like, you don't even have to use that example, but, like, how we were talking about, like, you can see how this one guy does this, and it works every single time. So, like, we call them, like, micro transitions, too, because, like, side control, but, you know, we've all been training long enough. There's, like, 37 side controls inside side control, you know, and now we're really honing those crafts. So, because I know, like, your perspective, and that's what really quick with me when me and you were chopping up last time, was this is not how I'm approaching it anymore. This is how I'm approaching it. And this is how I'm going to get to my goals because I thought it was just you laid it out in a good blueprint. So I just kind of wanted you to talk about it a little bit.
Sure. So so when I was like coming up in the sport, and especially when I started to train with John, you're building what I call like fundamental knowledge. Okay. And this is knowledge that everybody goes through when they train. For example, let's say you learn an arm bar. Okay. You're going to learn what's the fulcrum, what's the lever. You're like, why do we hold the hand here? Why do we break it over our hip rather than our whatever? So you learn like all the details that make the moves work. And what I experienced is that if you get so focused on that, you tend to miss the bigger picture. Now, those details are super important when you're developing your games. So let's say white until brown belt, just as a rough idea, okay? You need to learn those details so that you can do the moves in a manner where they're going to actually work against resistance. But once you already have that knowledge down, if you continue to just hyper focus on these details, which is the trend that I see now, and it's a thing that I think is a mistake at the higher levels, if you only focus on like, well, Gordon has his hands like this and not like this, and my pinky has to be here rather than here, and all these little things, you tend to miss the bigger picture and you lose the ability to learn context and you lose the ability to learn about concepts rather than specific mechanics. So again, mechanics are important and you should only move to learning about concepts once you can properly do the mechanics, right? Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. So my approach now, like since I would say the last like couple years, is not so much about like, oh, my elbow has to be here rather than here. It's more about how do I create the conditions against a resisting opponent to put myself in a position where I can use all the skills that I have learned the past 12 years. So like, again, a good example like I used is like Floyd Mayweather. Like you watch Floyd box, and one of the most notable things about him is his defense. And he does all these different defensive movements, right? He does slipping, he does shoulder rolls, he'll pick punches off with his glove, he does all these beautiful movements, and it looks like he's doing 100 different things. But what was explained to me is that he's really probably only doing 3 things. Mm-hmm. And he's doing 3 things, but 100 different ways. And I think when you look at the most talented jiu-jitsu athletes that I've seen, and in my opinion, the most efficient guys I've rolled with, that list being like anyone from like Gordon, Gary, the guys on my team, but also other guys like Ryan Hall is a master of this. What they make you feel like is like they're really only doing the same thing to you every fucking time, but for some reason you can't stop it. And the reason why I think they have that ability is because at this point in their game, they're not so concerned with specific mechanics. They're more concerned with like general concepts and principles and creating those conditions over and over and over, regardless of what their training partner is doing. And you quickly figure out that you're just doing the same things, but through different lenses. So like an armbar from guard is the same as an armbar from mount, is the same as an armbar from side control when you think about the fundamental ideas that make it work. Whether I'm in closed guard, the mount, or side control, I have a lever, I have a fulcrum, and I need to create tension in opposing forces. I need to pull the arm down while my hips are driving through. That doesn't change regardless of the position. So once you understand that in one position, you can apply it to all the other
every other position. Yep.
So by learning one thing, you're really learning a bunch of things. So that's kind of like the context of the discussion that we had when you and I were training.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great because it's like it's the same thing. Like everybody knows Jordan Burroughs is going to shoot a fucking double. Stop it.
Right. Nobody can stop it.
You know it's coming. It's like that's what I always say. It's like the slow, painful death. You want to get to a level where you know I'm going to throw that choke. You got to stop it.
Yeah. So
You
like
know?
Burroughs is another good example. Like I used to watch his double and I'd be like, fuck, how is this guy doing this? And all the doubles look a little different, right? Like sometimes he does it out of a post. Sometimes he does it out of a freeze fake. Sometimes he does it just from open space. But then you start to realize you're like, oh, wait a minute. There are conditions that are happening here that are present every time that he hits a successful double. Mm-hmm. So, for example, he always squares his training partner's feet up. He'll never shoot a double on a staggered opponent. It doesn't make sense. Can't reach the back leg. So by some way, he's always squaring the feet up. He's always creating effective level changes, and he's always using a similar grip with his hands behind the knee tendons rather than high up on the hips where he can get extended. So all of a sudden, you're like, oh, well, he's really just doing the same thing, but in a bunch of different ways. And I think that's why a guy like him is so consistent.
Yeah. Well, it is. He just becomes like, he's super good at the bit. Well, that was like Hodger for years, right? He wasn't doing anything fancy. He was mounting you and choking you.
Right.
Day one jiu-jitsu. Mount, choked. But he was doing it to the best guys in the world consistently, and they couldn't stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, again, like you see that across the board with the top athletes in any field. Like everyone's like, oh, man, like, you know, like nobody can stop Gordon. And I'm like, yeah, want to know why? Because Gordon understands like the three things against anybody, any human on earth that are going to make him successful. And he can do those, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a shorter answer is like in the beginning, you're learning a lot of knowledge, but then once you've mastered that, it's about simplifying and condensing that knowledge to make it as repeatable and consistent as possible. Because if you have to do 15 things really well to win a grappling match, you're not going to win a lot of grappling matches against the top black belts in the world. You're just not. Because that's asking too much. You know, but if you only have to do 3 or 4 things well, that's just a lot more manageable. And that's what I've learned training with the higher level guys. This is nothing that I've come up with. This is all stuff that, you know, they've passed on to me that I feel like is, you know, responsible for kind of helping me make that jump, or at least trying to make that jump. You know, I'm not drilling 50 leg drags at a time anymore. Like,
yeah, you know how to leg drag at this point.
I know how to do it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I just thought you articulated it really well by being able to like break it down. That's why I wanted you to have to talk about it a little bit, you know. So Vin, did you suck all this stuff in?
I hear it fucking every day, man. I live with the guy. We're roomies, you know. So it's like
life partners, whatever you guys want to call it. It's 2020. It's cool.
Chuck and Larry over here.
Yeah.
You can't see shit because Frankie's got the Pineapple Express T-shirt on right now. So
getting weird out here.
That's okay. Weird.
Yeah, no, like to add to that, I mean, shit. Like, was it like it's cliche, but like even Mozart said, like learn all the music theory you need and then throw that shit out when you master it, because it's like you can bend the rules when you know them. You know, you can put a little art into it when you know all the science. And it's like the best guys are at the meeting place of science and art, and that's what it looks like. It's all of these techniques expressed in an artistic way where it looks beautiful and it looks not forced. So like, it's one of those things where it's like, we'd say to each other, it's like, man, like if we fucking knew that 7 years ago, it's like, man, how much better could
what do you got?
rep in a shorter time? Because like rate of improvement is what we're all looking for in the end. But yeah, it's crazy. It's we'll have like we'll like talk about this shit like we in our kitchen. There's a whiteboard, and it'll be like 2 a.m, and we'll go out in the kitchen. We're both like in our fucking underwear, like, yo, think about this, and we just start writing shit like science, art. The best guys do this, man.
It's like good hunting over there, guys.
Like if somebody came to rob our apartment at 2 a.m. and just took a glance at this whiteboard, they would turn the fuck around and go home. Like we wouldn't even have to wake up. Like they'd be like, "Oh, fuck that! Like we're out of here. These guys are nuts."
A bunch of crazy people living here.
There's fucking diagrams and shit.
People don't understand because I think personally a lot of times they just see, if you're not into the sport, we've been doing it for a long time. So we realize that there's a lot of really highly intelligent people that train jiu-jitsu. And outside it looks like just 2 monkeys fucking a football. And they're like, oh, it's just 2 gorillas getting after it, right? So, but I think we've all been like, dude, we train with neurosurgeons, professors, junkies, cops, robbers, everybody. We get such a, that's why I think we have such a good outlook on life a lot of times, because we see so many different walks of life. We see so many different levels of intelligence and colors, creeds, races, whatever it is. I think we get a really unique perspective on a human being.
Yeah, definitely. I've learned more about people through jiu-jitsu than I ever have through any other endeavor I've been in. So yeah,
maybe a little cynical.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it. Like, say if like all 4 of us like never met each other, and like we just all ran into each other at Renzo's and like rolled with each other for the first time. Like it's almost like, not to get weird, but it's such like an intimate type of experience.
Yeah.
To really kind of sweat and bleed and really kind of expose like a part. I feel it really exposed who you really are in that type of combat setting. So I think that's why you find like a lot of people. Like, I mean, there's people who I train with who are like, who were like in my freaking wedding, like, like that people I'm just that close with, and like I've met them primarily through like jiu-jitsu. So
and again, like there's problems and good things and bad things that are going to happen in while you're training jiu-jitsu that only other jiu-jitsu people will understand. Like even say like getting a new belt, like your parents are going to be thrilled for you, right? But they don't understand really what it means the same way your training partner does or your instructor does. And same thing if you lose a match, like your friends are there to pick you up, right? And they're like, oh man, that sucks. And you're like, yeah, I get it, but you don't really get it how much it sucks. Like Vinny understands how much it sucks when I lose a match. My parents, as much as I love them, like they only have so much knowledge of what that really entails. So it's experiences that, like, again, only if you're on the mat can you understand whether it's good or bad.
So getting back to that a little bit. So how do you feel, now that you're a seasoned competitor, you've been training for a long time, you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu. How do you feel that you deal with the losses now as to prior in your career? Do you think you deal with them harder or better? Like more constructive? Because I know sometimes like I shut down and you don't fucking talk to the world for weeks because you're just like so upset with yourself, you get down on yourself, and then there's other times you're like, you know what, whatever, I'm going to be back at it again next week. Fuck it, this is part of the game.
I would say in some ways I deal with it better than when I was, like younger. In other ways I deal with it worse, but it's something that I'm very much trying to like continue to work on. I would say I deal with it better in the sense that I can better take out lessons from a loss than I could when I was a purple belt. Like I really get better at jiu-jitsu from studying the losses than I could when I was a purple belt, because my jiu-jitsu IQ is just so much higher than it was 5-6 years ago. And then I would say on the same kind of thing, I take it a little worse because 5 or 6 years ago, jiu-jitsu maybe didn't mean as much as it does to me now. It wasn't the way I was making a living. I wasn't as heavily invested in it. So emotionally, like, it fucking sucks, and then again, I'm also a little bit more mature now, or at least I try to be, than I was. So I try to take it with a more mature approach. And, I would say like when I was like a younger, like blue belt, purple belt, whatever, maybe I would be really, really fucked up over it for 4 days. And now I try to like minimize that to like be like, all right, like you can be a little bitch for an hour, but after that hour, like go on living your life, like figure out what you can control and do to get better from this. And let's go do that. Rather than like feeling so sorry. But it's tricky, man.
And at the end of the day, Vinny still loves you.
Yeah.
See?
How could you not?
And that's all that matters, though. Like as you get older, you do like you know like where you can, and then it's good to have good close friends and be like, yo, stop being a bitch. You got to man up. Let's move forward. Let's do it. Get out of the funk because you're not going to learn because that's 4 days you could have been training or 4 days you could have been working on your loss.
Yeah.
But
so
we all gotta have a pity party for ourselves every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I take it hard, maybe harder than a lot of people do, but I always tell whoever's around me, I'm like, I don't want your sympathy. I want you to tell me to shut the fuck up and then like let's go train, because to me that's the most like that's how you're gonna get better out of it.
Yeah. I found it really interesting too, like some of the tournaments that I've had, Garrett's pretty much cornered me at every tournament that I've had, wins or losses. Like even like the younger students and the lower belts who would watch and would see the losses. And I remember, I think my last loss, I had a student come up to me the next day of class and say like, oh, I knew you lost and everything. I thought you did great, but I was surprised I took it with such like grace. And then I turned to him, I'm like, yeah, well, listen, man, granted I lost, like I'm not going to quit jiu-jitsu tomorrow.
Right.
Like I'm not just going to quit this whole thing, like just give it up. So I'm like, I would say the same thing. I said the same thing to him. Like, if you're going to compete and whatnot, and the losses happen, like, you're not just going to quit the sport after all, like, this hard work you put into. So it was interesting to see, like, I guess he said it kind of inspired him, too. Like, it kind of inspiring, like, those younger people who are coming up and want to, like, against competing or anything else, too, as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Even, like, we talked about just, like lately, like, having that neutral mindset. Like, don't, like you're never, like, totally pumped about it because it's like you got to compete in another week anyway or 2 weeks from now anyway. So it's like don't hyper celebrate if you lost. It's what it is. Like it's coming at it from a neutral mindset at all times.
Trying to be more even keel, I guess, right? Just cool, calm, collected. Keep that flow, and it's like you can enjoy the peaks, but don't ride them too long because there's always a dip.
Yeah.
Right. And at the same time, you lose. Let's say you lose a big match, and then a week later, you come back, you deck the guy, and people forget about those losses pretty quick. It's amazing how quick, actually.
Yeah. It's a super interesting sport where I feel like, unlike other sports, the rate at which an athlete can go from here to here or here to here is so fast. It's so fast. Like you can be the most relevant guy, not the most, but like a very relevant guy in our sport, and in a month or a year or whatever. Off, and vice versa. You can be a Craig Jones. 2017, like 5 people knew who Craig Jones was, and then after ADCC, he's Craig Jones. So I think it's one of those things where like if you prepare and you put the work in, like you have the best opportunity at creating conditions where like you can take a couple losses, but then one big win puts you right back, at the top. And so that's why it's also important to stay sharp too, because if you're at the top, it doesn't mean you're going to be guaranteed to stay there.
Listen,
like,
somebody's always nipping at your heels.
Yeah. I mean, I know, like, I see, like, the top guys, like, they train harder now than they did on their way up because they have more to protect, they have more to lose. And that's how it should be if you want to stay there.
If you want to stay at the top, yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to go on cruise control.
That's right.
That's how you fall real hard.
Yeah.
Right. It was awesome. So what's it called? Hey, we appreciate having you guys on tonight, man. So real quick, Roll Junkie, our sponsor. Frankie, I got something coming your way.
Yes.
So make sure you post it up, tag Roll Junkie in it. But promo code 2LiveFools gets you 15% off your entire order. right? And what else did they have drop? They did a new T-shirt. They got a new gi out. They got 2 new rash guards dropping, short shorts, whatever.
Next couple of weeks, they got a whole bunch. They got a whole new line of stuff. New gis. They had a full rash guard set. So check them out, man.
Yeah. Hey, boys, Vinny, it was so nice to speak with you, my friend. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. We love you, buddy.
See you, boys.
Good luck next week.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take it easy.